All right, so we're just gonna look at the template here and see how it uses the asset information.
So the first section is about petitioner, that which is the user. And then we get down to here, and there's one little funny thing. So here's this section 8. It asks for a schedule of every asset of the probate estate and the estimated value. They do ask for a car, vehicle, but it's not counted against the total. So they only ask for the description, make, model, and VIN of the car, of the vehicle, but no total. And then every other asset has a description and an estimated value. And then we have to total.
Do we have any information about the vehicle? Because I'm guessing like it's the household vehicle that's not counted, but after that they are, is my guess.
Yeah, if there's more than one.
If there's more than one vehicle, then you have to count it, right?
The second one counts, yeah.
Okay. And you really would probably want to ask about the car a different way than the other assets, right? And all right.
Want to stick it in the asset table.
Yep. Well, ultimately it goes in the asset table, and only the car goes in that first spot. And then the rest of the assets go in the remaining rows, plus an addendum, I would guess, would come up relatively often, although maybe not for something like this. I'm not sure. When you talked with probate attorneys, did they say how often people use this form if they have, I mean, it's probably not too hard to have more than 4 assets.
No, he didn't say how often they attach an addendum, but he did say that they focus mostly on retirement accounts and bank accounts, and that nobody ever does really add the furniture or the other more tangible things. This is if they did have something else like a boat or something, they might just, I don't know. I don't know if they would leave it off this, but he said this is focused on the accounts that you really need to be the probate for to get the value out. Like if somebody's doing this for their husband's boat, they may have a way to deal with that boat. But if they don't have a way to get into the accounts if they're not the personal representative, the PR.
Okay, so that's why it's asked as the probate estate. So if they're not jointly titled or something, maybe, right? Yeah, okay. Oh, and this does say list the people who are joint owners of the property. Okay. All right, so it seems like we want to collect from the set list of assets might be helpful for somebody, but definitely we want to separate out the cars from the other kinds of assets. And assets, we could probably just think of broadly as just being accounts that the person has. Right?
Yeah.
So we could probably just borrow those parts of the financial statement that we already have, and including the way it prompts for the information. Let's take a look at your form again in the playground.
Right.
Okay. So where it has our include statement, and I can't remember for sure how good so I basically wrote that financial statement for in kind of the abstract a little bit first, but it was mostly for that Social Security form that I showed you. And then I didn't necessarily go back and revise the financial statement in all of the cases to make the changes that I would have wanted to make. But I think it might work okay. Let's see. So we have vehicles and assets as already. You have questions about those, I think.
You had a separate vehicle list was separate than your assets, which is a value list. If I'm looking in the same place.
Yeah. So you don't have to copy anything out of here necessarily, because I think it's the same questions, except we have year, make, model, and VIN. I think those were the 4 fields that you had.
Yeah. Just make, model, and VIN.
Oh, it doesn't have the year at all. Okay. So, all right. Yeah, let's go back to the playground. So we might customize a lot of that, but let's start with that as our base, and then we'll just see what it looks like. Okay, so in the section where you include basic questions, we can add and include right there. That includes this financial statement file. Okay. And we'll see what we want to tweak. It's probably at the top of the interview.
Yeah.
There we go. Yep, so, okay, a new line, and then it's going to be docassemble.income colon financial underscore statement dot YAML. Now, in your, that just makes those objects available. No mandatory code will run. So you need to have some reference. So I would get rid of line 50, because now we're redefining assets and we don't need to do that. And where's your interview order block?
It's down here in the middle. I don't know why. I've got some questions above it and then some questions below it.
Okay.
But
you might want to put it back up towards the top just so that it's easy to find later, but it's not necessary. All right. So in there, maybe we'll do at the beginning, just so we can see what it looks like, do assets.gather, open and close parentheses. Yeah, we'll have it be the first question temporarily, like at 270. This is a good way to test questions too, when you're trying to get ahead to the good part.
That's a good way to know. Assets.
Gather, open and close parenthesis. Yeah, assets.gather. And then, yep, like that. Looks like you have an extra, I can't see what it is. Yeah, parenthesis there. Okay. And do the same thing for vehicles. Do vehicles.gather too. And we'll see what we like about those questions, what we don't like. So we can do a new save and run.
Do your spouse or someone in your household own the following? Okay, so that's where it sets the, are there any values? And then it goes into the questions if there are any.
So the one thing I noticed is we don't want the real estate question, right? Because that's not something you have to declare on this form.
You can't have any.
Oh, you can't have any at all if you use the form. Okay. So, and the phrasing isn't right. It's not do you, your spouse, or someone in your household have these things. So we can start with this question though. And you can start with the source and copy it in and then tweak it to look like what you want.
Any
Yeah.
where it goes.
All right, so let's change it. So let's take out the real estate question. That's definitely not necessary. That's line 307 to 308. And I think this phrasing makes some sense, right? In terms of asking if they have any vehicles, and we don't want to say other than the family car.
Right.
It's including that. It needs to be declared on the form, it appears.
Yeah. I don't know that a boat would count. Would
So
be
out boats then. Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, like limousines, SUVs, trucks, things like that. Okay.
And then you can change, get rid of the help. I don't think that's really necessary, actually. Oh,
Okay.
it's kind of just repeating what it said there in 307, I think.
Yes. But I also changed it because we're not looking at your vehicle and accounts. This is the decedent.
So we'll want to change that in lines 303 and 305 to be more clear.
And I can do that at another time.
Okay. And then on line 313, we have a list of like predetermined types. If you like that list, let's go back into the running interview that's open and see. If you want to change those, you can just remove that line where it's referring to the predetermined list and just put in a choices statement there with the choices that you want it to be displayed.
Okay. These are good. I think, yeah, IRA retirement. I think these are good. I don't see any that if anything, I might need to add, but checking savings is all in there. This looks fine to me.
Okay. Now let's go back to the playground then, and let's save and refresh, I guess.
Okay. Refresh this.
Mhm.
Okay, and you can check, you cannot check this and check none of the above for other.
Right.
Okay.
So let's try it and see what it does. I can't remember if what happens next. I think what happens is if you pre-select these, it'll ask you for more information about the ones you pre-selected. Let's try that. Okay, so this is asking us because it needs to know who else owns the thing. Let's click next. We'll want to get rid of that part of the form. Okay, it needs our name, which we don't really need, but let's go ahead and enter it in now. And until we get to the actual question we want to change, so no longer needs this. Okay.
First asset.
So let's click source. Not sure why it's asking it that way. Okay, let's look at what was going on with this. I think what happens is okay. Let's go back into our running playground. Sorry, you're not seeing what I'm seeing, but I'm just looking at how I had written this. So there's after we ask for the type of assets, there's some code which like pre-defines some of the assets to match what the person's checked off.
Okay.
In the financial statement demonstration. So if we scroll up, and before we have assets.gather, put assets.add_assets. That triggers the same question, which asks if they have any assets, but it also will, if you checked off CD, savings account, checking account, it'll show you the question with CD, savings account, checking account pre-filled in, instead of making you type in the type of asset after you said what type of assets you have, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes.
We also want to change this question here, as you were starting to do, to remove the information about who owns it, because that's not needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of this is
But we're going
not.
to get a slightly different question because it will already have the asset type pre-selected, which is a different version of this question.
Okay.
And you don't need to have the interest income or the frequency it's provided. Basically, we need very little of this information, except for we want to know the type or description. What do you think? They probably want more to the description than just.
Yeah, just CD or bank account. I mean,
I want like an account number or something, right?
I don't think on this form they do. I don't think there's no verification going on. They're not saying, oh, they say this, Rockland Trust account has $3,000. They're not going to go check it. I think it's just that what they're trying to verify is that it's in the ballpark of under 25,000. But
Okay.
I mean, on the form, it doesn't ask for anything. Does not ask for an account number or even bank.
Let's think about what you would want to use to describe. And let's look at the playground, sorry, one more time, the running interview rather. And it needs one of the fields. I think it's just the value field. But if we click on source, it's already open actually, source, and then we scroll down a bit and see, I believe it's value that it's looking for. Yeah. So assets.
Balance? Oh, value.
I think assets are funny.
Because they're looking for like, do you get a monthly interest payment off of this thing, right?
We have a balance total, so that we could use that. We can use the balance rather than the value. Okay. So we really don't want very much of this question.
Okay.
The only thing we want to do is show a different version of, like, we want to ask what type of asset it is only if they haven't already told us what type of asset it is, I think. So we can copy that part of the fields, like what type of asset is it, and showing the list. Maybe the other part as well, and then the balance, but we don't need the owner.
Okay.
Basically, we want to copy.
I would take the whole thing and then just delete from over there. Is that all right?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely okay. All right, so let's figure out where we want to put that. Yeah, I can go before or after this. This is fine. All right. I don't think we comment outlines 303 and 304 for now. Those aren't too important. Instead of comment on line 305, we can just make that ID. Because we don't actually. All right. And you'll change the question later. And you probably don't need the sub question at all. All right. Leave this asset type the way it is. Leave the explain what type of asset it is. Get rid of the owner part. So that's 319 through 322. And get rid of everything after line 320. We don't need any of those other details anymore. Okay, so now let's save and refresh and let's see what our screen looks like now. Yeah, and you could probably do like value, change it to like current value, maybe, or something like that. Balance might be better for like current value or balance, maybe. Who knows? Yeah. You can work on the wording later.
I'll ask my SME what he thinks. Okay. And refresh. Okay.
Much simpler, right? All right. Yeah. And we probably want to add a line here that says something like, that prompts for the this, maybe the account institution or something that is like that.
Yeah, just so they can keep it straight also, if they've got a couple different savings accounts.
Another good point. Yeah.
So maybe like, give it,
So what kind of assets might someone have that if it's all like ones that are in institutions, that's all that they care about,
yeah,
then we can just say like, what bank or institution is this account in? Someone could still have 3 checking accounts at Bank of America or something, right?
right.
So you might also ask for a nickname. I don't know.
True.
Or you could just phrase it as describe this account.
Yeah, because that's true. That's what the form asks for.
Sometimes the forms aren't very helpful. You do want something that, reflects back to what the form actually says. But so that when they're answering a question, it makes sense when they see the form, but it doesn't have to have the exact same wording. So you might give like some kind of clue that says, maybe a help here that says, include information that can let you uniquely describe this account, like the bank name, for example, or something like that. Maybe you might want to add that detail later. Okay, so for the field name, it's going to be something like assets I, and you can add whatever arbitrary attribute you want. So so on 315, I would just call it like assets bracket I dot description.
You don't have to define that anywhere.
What's that?
You don't have to define it anywhere or
Nope.
put it. You just can call it when you need it, and it'll make it.
We had to create the object, but attributes docassemble lets you build on the fly.
All right, does that look good? Asset stock description.
Okay, and then yeah, I think that's good to include. That looks like a pretty good reworking of that. Let's go back to our playground. And we're just going to tweak a little bit more about this, okay? So you're in the playground already, sorry. Back up to the interview order block. All right. So this also has a review page where you can see reflected back like what information you've provided about assets so far. I think that's a helpful thing to include here too in your form.
Okay.
So that is just, let's copy that the same way. So if assets dot there are any review assets is what I had, which I think is good. I'll put that on the chat.
Okay.
Or actually, you know what I'll do is I'll put it on the Slack. I'll put it on the chat too, but
Okay.
That way it will be preserved better for later. So the review assets, you're probably going to want to change that a little bit, but we'll start with that because you're going to want to show those fields that you're asking for. Actually, you're going to want to change it almost right away. So let's just see. Review assets. You're going to want to customize that question and then the table. So. So there's that question you're going to want to customize at some point. Let's try. So it asks for things like the owner, which you don't have anymore. So
Where did you put that last question? That you said you're nice at some point.
the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, the table I just put on the chat Slack just now.
Okay.
So we can pull that into your playground, and basically the first thing we want to do is just take out the owner and income rows, and I think it'll probably make sense how to do to add in the new fields that we just created, but it maybe is too much information, but we'll start with that. So start by just customizing the table, because you'll need that in order for it to work. I wouldn't worry as much about customizing that question, but you can do both.
Okay. This one I can just pull in.
I think this will be a really helpful form. Thanks for working on it. I think a lot of people will benefit from it, unfortunately, but I mean, it's something that was challenging, even if you're a lawyer. And my wife's father passed away recently, and it was something that was hard to figure out how to do. Ultimately, she hired another lawyer to help with it.
It's the last thing you want to be struggling over at a time like that, right? It's just like it's painful to treat somebody in this way when they've just passed, but they have to. All right, so I've got the table. So this is the assets table. This is the collection of what you've just collected through the forms questions.
Yeah. So let's delete the owner information. So that's 309 and through 310.
Okay.
The format should make sense. We want to keep the type. There's no income. We're not caring about how much income these assets make, so get rid of that. So we have type and balance. Change line 314 so it says balance instead of period. That's what lets you change the value when you're reviewing it. And then we're not having the period isn't defined anymore, so that doesn't make sense to include that. Okay, and you can add new columns like using this as a model.
Okay, yeah, like description.
And then the way it works is you have row item, that's the row, and then you can have whatever attribute or transform or whatever you want. So line 310 is more complicated than the typical row would be.
Okay, but like the description would just be
row item dot description.
Description. Okay. Maybe I'll just add that. Let's see. Get that. Oops, and did that get thrown off somehow? The tab.
Yep, you just have to read it. Just hit tab. I'll do it. Yeah. All right. So yeah, just row item dot description should do it for this. Okay.
It should be not if I'm not putting it into currency, right?
Right. So that's good. That's perfect. And that's a good model if there's anything else you want to display on that page later. Okay, so I would just save. I think this should get triggered so you can see what it looks like. There was no point in doing it before because it would just make you answer the other questions we decided we didn't need. So yeah, refresh. Maybe you don't need to refresh. I don't know. I guess you'll have to re-enter this now, but.
I must have put another one.
You must have checked two things. And so this doesn't include the code that copied in the type of asset yet. So here, this is the review table that you would get.
All right, great. That's really nice.
Okay, and let's click next, and we're going to see how the vehicle questions look. I don't know if you have to tweak that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so we don't care about value, loan balance, or why they have it, or who the owner is.
Right.
So, but you could basically use the model we just did to tweak the other question, to tweak this one. And then
I did say we have one, so I have to put this. But this is not. Yeah, should I do that now? I can do that later, I think.
well, let me give you the question that shows the table, because that's a little trickier to track. Although I think you probably figured it out, but I'll put that on the Slack. And let's see. This is the vehicle review table. Again, you would want to edit it to delete the information that the person doesn't give you. So when you tweak the question, also tweak the table that reviews it. And let's see, to trigger that review table, the question is just review vehicles. So
Do I do the same thing if vehicles, there are any review vehicles?
yeah. I guess you probably want it after.
After the assets?
Yeah, actually, that's fine. Yeah, the assets.gather doesn't do anything anymore because you already have the review assets. I realized that. So yeah, so vehicles.there.
Vehicles, yeah.
Plural, yep. Okay. Now, the only thing is, do you want any, you probably want to just see how you're going to put this into the attachment, is my guess. But you might already have figured it out, but.
I haven't looked much into that, so no, but if, yeah.
Let's give it a try we'll start with the vehicles. So let's go down to your attachment block.
Okay.
And I hope I didn't send you, I hope this was valuable and not just like me.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It is. I mean, now I know a little bit more about these objects and how to work around in a table. I couldn't even get this stuff to run, like any of these questions, to be able to steal the source from it. So I need to still probably ask somebody that, but I don't need to do that right now. But yeah, I know this did.
Well, this should be mostly what you need. Now you just want to rearrange it in your interview so it's in a lot more logical place, but it should be what you put it to run now. Okay, so asset car. Let's start with that one.
Okay.
That one, which was a little further down, actually, I think.
Okay, yes.
All right, so we would make that be, I think there's a special way that the vehicle name was displayed built into the vehicle list, but your version of it needs different fields, unfortunately, so you can't just use that. Okay. But make it vehicles dot item, and then open and close parenthesis. Sorry, and then it'll be put 0 in there inside the item.
Now, what's the...
So dot item is really handy when you're working with a PDF, and you might want to change your other references below to be similar.
Okay.
So what it does is, if there's nothing in that, if we didn't get any vehicles, then it won't trigger an error.
Okay.
Even if that, I think that skip undefined actually does something really similar, which you already have turned on for this.
Okay. I haven't been getting errors for this stuff.
Yeah, so it may not be necessary, but it's still like, it's a good, yeah, that makes it clearer that it's optional, I think. It's hard to figure out if that's still necessary because of skip undefined, but skip undefined was just created this summer. It's a new thing. All right. So we're gonna have, and now you're gonna want to show and decide the format of your, actually, let's change this a little bit. So line 544. It might be easier to read if you do it on separate lines, right?
Okay. I haven't done that before, or I don't see any examples, so.
So just put a vertical pipe on line, yep, right there. And then a space and indent it. Yeah. Indent the next line. Okay, so now you can have all of this only has to be indented. Actually, and at whatever level looks clean and neat to you, I suppose, but it only has to be indented. One below that. Yeah, that's good. All right. So now you can have in separate lines the different parts of the name that you want to have. So item 0 dot, what does it ask for? Make, model, and VIN.
Yeah.
So I think we actually use those same fields. So make, and we don't have a place for a VIN yet, but you'll need that. I'm just gonna look to see exactly. Yeah, so we have make and model. Okay. And then VIN, which you'll have to add.
Okay.
And yeah, just close up those brackets for make and model.
Oh, do I every time it needs a new one?
Yeah. Okay. It's just a little easier to read than if you tried to cram them onto one line. Okay.
And then
show anything in between them, which is what you want, I think, because you don't know if there will be any vehicle for them to tell us about. Okay, so for the assets, it's simpler, but it would just be the description is its own. You made it separate values on the PDF. So you just have the description and the value, and change the value to the balance, I guess, because that's actually what we're using. Might as well change that now. And then there you do assets dot balance underscore total on that line that you're on right now.
here.
Yep. Assets dot balance total. And it's plural asset. Yep. And then open and close parentheses.
Here.
At the end of balance total. Okay. Yeah, let me just make sure I got that right. And yeah, you don't care what type it is, so it's just the total balance of all the assets. Yeah. So that's perfect. And I mean, you could change these other references to the assets to use dot item instead, but you don't absolutely need to because you have skip undefined turned on.
Okay.
I think all you have to do to get this to run is to add the VIN field on the vehicle. So since that's the last thing, we can just do that now so you don't leave and have to fix something that will be broken. We can just tweak the wording instead.
And where was that?
Let's just search for vehicles bracket I and we'll get to the right place right away. Oh, we're not doing that in our, okay, you have to copy that question in, sorry.
Okay. Which one? The vehicle? Yeah, I haven't done any of this yet. It's this question, right?
And again, it's a good habit to change where it says comment vehicle.
Okay.
I just didn't have that habit of putting an ID on every question, but it is a good habit to have. It'll make it easier for testers later. So you change that to an ID. And then, yeah, add VIN and get rid of whatever else you want. There's a lot of it. It's interesting that they asked for the VIN, but not for the bank account number.
Oh, VIN is very detailed.
And it's something where you need physical access, I would assume, more than you need for a bank account. Although
Yeah.
that probably isn't what they thought about when they wrote these forms originally. Maybe online banking is newer than that form, maybe. Not sure. So yeah, okay, you got that. Okay, and then you're going to want to have to change the review screen for the vehicles too, so it only shows these fields. That's one more thing to do, but that will be something using the same.
Same
We can do
template.
that too if we want. I have time. I know I'm taking away from your time, your morning with your kids too.
Oh, no,
Maybe
it's
instead of maybe.
yeah, I was hoping it'd be quick, but this is really helpful, and I will go back and do it like slower, make sure I get everything. I mean, I get it, but I will.
Okay, so maybe this was a good stopping point then, because we've gone through for one in more detail, and we finished editing the attachment block. So yeah, that's the last part that you'll have to do is just adjusting the table for the vehicles so that it matches this. And I'll pop the recording on there as soon as it finishes processing too.
Awesome. All right, excellent. Thank you so much. This gives me a lot more room to run with, and if I have any questions, I'll post them on Slack, but this has been really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and have a good weekend.
All right, you too.
Right.
See you next week, I'm sure.
Yep. Bye.